What's your best fire me? I fucking dare you moment from work? I was 17 and working part-time at a fast food restaurant. Someone wrecked the men's restroom. Shat in the urinal. Rubbed poop all over the wall. The manager came out and told me to clean it. I refused. She threatened to fire me. To which I laughed in her face and told her you can clean it yourself or you can lose an employee and still clean it yourself. I don't need this job. Needless to say, I wasn't fired and I didn't clean that up. I still laugh thinking about it. Worked for a newspaper. Editing and actually putting the paper together. Arranging it all. Placing stories and pictures where they need to be. Titling. Quoting and sourcing everything. I was a one-man team and used an overly complicated system that I figured out how to use really effectively. They treated me like poop. Set impossible deadlines and berated me for not meeting them. One day the boss tells me to fully put a paper done by the end of the day. Gave me no warning. I had no articles from the journalists and no photos from photographers. It was my job to collect it all from everyone and he wants me to do it in a single day? I told him no. If he wants it done, he has to give me more time. He tells me if I don't have it done by the end of the day I'm fired. I tell him that this paper can't function without me. He tells me I need to take the day off and cool my temper and that he'll do my job for me. Get a call an hour after I get home that he needs me to come in and do it and I can have as much time as I need. Promptly quit on that asshole. Frick your poopty newspaper. I once called in sick to my part-time job at Club Monaco. My manager told me that if I couldn't find anyone to cover my shift, I was going to be fired. So I FaceTimed her from the ER and had the doctor explain to her that I needed an MRI cause they wanted to make sure I didn't have a brain tumor. When I was 17 I worked a summer holiday job at Pizza Hut. I had transferred to my hometown restaurant from my university town restaurant. I was there for 5 weeks and hadn't been paid yet. The PP head boss claimed it was because I gave him the wrong employee number. I hadn't. Anyway, after 5 weeks of no pay I rang him on New Year's Eve, i.e. busiest night of the summer, and said I wasn't coming to work because I wasn't a volunteer and I wasn't going to work for free. He told me if I didn't go to work I may as well not come back as I would be fired. I didn't go to work and had a fun New Year's instead. Then a few days later I called the employment tribunal, I'm in New Zealand, and told them what had happened. They called my PP head boss. He then called me. Offered me my job back and was nice as pie for the rest of the summer. I worked at an unspecified telecom a few years ago. I was a senior manager in charge of programming, third level support, and production support. A business unit bullied through code changes made by the business side through a side deal with a legacy programmer in the data center, circumventing my team. QA and production testing that just had to get implemented immediately without going through any testing at all. I refused. The CIO overruled me. 72 hours later, phone activations had ground to halt. Customers nationwide were screaming. And the CIO called phone conference after phone conference demanding timelines for when I was going to get this poop fixed. He kept screaming to have members of my team to get on the phone and explain themselves to him. I refused. Finally I snapped and told him that if he wanted me to fix his mistake I would need to get off the fricking phone, go work with my teams. And the only reason they hadn't walked out yet was that I was keeping him off their asses. But we would all happily go together. 24-ish hours later QA and my team had the bull poop cleaned up and fixed for a clean rollout. This was all to avoid a 24-hour delay for QA production testing. I wish I could say that was the only worst time. Husband was having his gallbladder taken out and was having complications before surgery. I needed to leave early from work for about 2 hours and my boss threw a fit stating I couldn't leave. I told her I had 300 hours of sick time I can use for myself and my husband, and if she wanted to push I'd take all of it at once, leaving no one but her to do my job. She said she'd fire me if I tried. I just looked at her and said I have to go, I'll send you my DR's note. I wasn't fired. I was actually awarded that year for job performance. I just threatened to since I was protected by FMLA. I only took the day off. Over the first year I worked there, I essentially took over most of the tasks in my department which were previously held by other departments and was done badly because of it. This led to a massive increase in productivity. I then found out I was paid significantly less than what others were making and others in my position across the industry were making. So I go to my boss and tell them I had done all this work increasing productivity and I would like to discuss a raise. They said no. So I worked there for another year, asking for a raise every now and again until I was offered a job that paid double. It didn't start for a couple months, so I held on to that job until I was set to submit my 2 weeks. I asked for a raise again, thinking what the hell, why not? My boss goes off, tells me I won't get a raise and says some very colorful things about it. It culminated with her telling me, if you don't like your pay, maybe we should evaluate your future at this company, to which I replied, already have. I took another job and this was your last chance to offer me what I deserve. I quit and walked out of that office. Friends told me that my sudden departure caused a massive backup of work that ended with my manager being fired for it. Worked for Radio Shack and always butted heads with the district manager. He wanted me to use these ridiculous sales techniques that might work in a big city but were really pushy. The year he became our DM, I won a contest for best salesman in the whole company, out of about 14,000 employees. And I did it without being pushy and forcing stuff on people. He still tried to get me to use these ridiculous techniques each month when he would visit. But after I won the contest I stopped sugarcoating it and would flat out tell him that's stupid. I'm not going to do it that way. Was 19 and working a minimum wage job in a shop. Owner sold the business to a new guy who had never worked in the industry and knew nothing about any of it. His first day in charge, he decides I look unprofessional and should be wearing a uniform. Then he decides the uniform should include a fluorescent cap with my name embroidered on it. I told him I wouldn't have taken this job if it had included wearing a fluorescent cap with my name embroidered on it. But he tells me it's going to be mandatory from now on. So I will be sacked if I don't wear it. Fine by me. I'll be leaving for any other job which pays exactly the same but doesn't make me wear a ridiculous hat. And I'll take with me my good relationships with all our contractors and suppliers. And my knowledge of how the frick all your equipment actually works. Reader. He didn't fire me. Nor was I presented with a spiffy new hat when all the other employees got theirs. I did leave about 2 weeks later though, as he was an insufferable twat face with a real anger issue. And was impossible to work with. Was very tempted to pop in and visit wearing a cap with my name on. But I didn't want him to die from rage. I'm a speech therapist. I work in a skilled nursing facility. For the most part, they all suck. This is no exception. But the place I used to work, the boss was a scumbag. To the extent that the entire rehab staff signed a letter asking to get him fired. He was basically forced out. I eventually left and came to my current job. I swung by the rehab gym and saw his ass sitting in my current boss's office. I kind of froze in shock. I thought he was interviewing for a job there. So I went to the boss at the time and told her flat out that if he got hired, I was walking out immediately. She got a stunned look on her face and quickly assured me that he wasn't working there. That was my first time drawing a line in the sand like that. For the past few years I've worked at one of the nicer restaurants in my small beach town. I'm one of the only servers there who cares about doing a good, and I'm the only one who doesn't take a smoke break every 15 minutes. This past summer a new, very illegal rule was implemented that if we messed up an order in any way we would be liable to pay for that messed up food. I usually didn't have a problem with mess ups, so I didn't bring up the legality of this matter since I make good money and don't want to start fires in places that don't concern me. That until I rang in a cherry glazed burger instead of a cherry glazed steak, each stylized CGB and CGS in our poopty computer system. I fixed this with the kitchen, but not before they had already started the burger. I told my manager and she just gave me a disappointed and told me that the rules are the rules. I then dived into both federal and state workers' rights code and told her she would never see me again if I found any money out of my tips at the end of the night. Never had a problem fixing an order again. Was working in a restaurant. Already knew I was sick, but our managers were assholes and I knew if I called in they'd be extremely pissy. Showed up to work around 8 AM. By 9 AM I knew I wasn't gonna last the rest of the day. Manager still made me stay. Around 9:30 I was pre-bussing my tables and just the sight of half-eaten food pushed me over the edge. Managed to hold my vomit until I got to the dishwashing area but puked in a trash can immediately after putting my plates down. A co-worker saw me and vouched for me when I went to tell my manager I was leaving for the doctor. He said, "Even with a doctor's note, if you leave work today you'll be fired." I said, "You have human waste in a kitchen trash can and haven't even done anything about it. It's on camera. I'm leaving." Showed up for work a few days later and didn't hear anything about it. Ended up quitting a few weeks later for a job at a couple considerably higher scale restaurant. Put in my 2 weeks notice at wildly understaffed job. 6 days later got sick. I call around and see if anyone can take my shift. No one is available. Tried to call out that morning. Shitty manager tries to persuade me to come in even though I am barfing everywhere. I non-committally agree to call in later in the day to see if I am feeling up to coming in anyway. Call back. Say I am still sick and will not be coming in. Manager blows up at me in front of customers. Being rude as frick. Eventually asks what I expect to do about the shift needing to be covered. I say I have done everything I am required to and it sounds like a management problem to me. Hang up and turn my phone off. I was elbows deep in an damp Unix machine that should have been replaced a decade before. Parts strewn all over a desk. When the client came in to see what was taking me so long. One of the power supplies has failed. There's a bad CMOS battery and the video card is glitchy and refusing to allow the machine to post sometimes. 15 minutes. Laughing. I can patch things up in a couple hours. But I'm going to have to come back in a few days with new parts. I'll find someone that knows what they're doing. I stood up. Grabbed my tools. And started walking. And that's longer than a half hour. So I guess I'm fired. My firing lasted about 3 more steps towards the door. Worked at a private medical college in Punjab, India. They wanted me to falsify patient admissions to get increased grants from Govt. I refused. They said that I would be fired. I was the only resident with specializing in orthopedics. I was let go. Then came surprise checking by Govt medical body. I was offered 3 times my monthly pay to attend for 1-day inspection. I asked for 5 times and they agreed. I ditched out at the last moment. They lost their recognition of depth of orthopedics with insufficient residents. No admission in ortho till next checking. My dog became very ill quite suddenly and he needed to be put down. I was at work and I asked to leave half an hour early so I could be there for him. I asked my manager and she got annoyed and said there was no way and that I should have told her earlier. I said I'm sorry, I didn't realize my dog was going to die in the most sarcastic way possible, then walked away knowing she'd follow me. I then stood at my desk and typed my resignation up in front of her. She gave me the time off. No one was going to stop me from being there for my boy. I was working at a shoe store in a mall and I requested a week in August off for my wedding. My manager told me her boss wasn't happy about that and all I said was my wedding is more important than back to school sales. They didn't fire me. They just stopped scheduling me and eventually my access to the employee website went away. As I was studying in Paris, I also worked night shifts in a hotel near the Hôtel de Ville district. I worked from 8 PM to 8 AM several nights in a row. The hotel was very busy as it was a very touristic area, so getting 4 hours of sleep over the total 4-5 nights was usual. It happened several times a week that the hotel manager simply forgot to relieve me in the morning. So I'd be falling asleep on the counter as they came 2 or 3 hours late. When I politely remark that I'm tired and that they're late again, he'd simply laugh it off and say, I guess we forgot about you finally. I decided to pass a job interview for some other work that essentially happened during the day, so I'd finally sleep my nights. When I found out that they accepted me in that new job, I waited until my shift should have started that Friday evening and phoned that manager waiting for me to relieve him at the desk. Oh hello. I just called to say that I got a new job from next Monday, so I'm not coming tonight. Nor ever. What do you? But you can't. Why didn't you say something sooner? I guess I forgot about you. Hey you. Thanks for watching Reddit stories. If you enjoyed the video, consider hitting like and subscribing. Your support means a lot. We also have a Discord community where we will be running giveaways and fun surprises throughout the year. Come along and meet some new friends. You look great today.